Good morning, friends. As you all remember, we are discussing academic writing. In my first class on this particular subject, I have told you that academic writing, because it is very purpose specific, has certain rules and norms. You have to understand that the purpose of academic writing is always communication in the first place, and communication of ideas and information with a view to improving the store of knowledge of the intended target audience or target readership. Are you getting my point? What I mean, in other words, is to point out that academic writing, yes, it aims at communication. What does it communicate? If it is personal writing, say a personal letter, a WhatsApp message nowadays, what does it mean? It actually expresses your emotions. Sometimes it actually exchanges information also. Whether you will attend this class or not, whether you will go to the picnic or not, when you are coming to meet a particular person or vice versa. Similarly, academic writing, because this adjective is there, academic, having to do something with the academia, with education. Because it is educational, you have to understand that here ideas, conclusions, information, all these things are communicated. But because it is purpose specific, this communication is also structured. For example, when I say ideas, conclusions, information, that is not the proper sequence. The proper sequence has to be information, ideas, and inferences or conclusions. Because first you see, you get information, you collect information, you communicate information. Now, when you analyze information, you come to certain ideas. Certain ideas are formed about a particular subject. And based on ideas and information, you may have certain ideas about a person, about a topic, about an engagement, or whatever. You get certain bits of information. Now, based on these things, you actually come up with an inference or a conclusion. So, what you intend to communicate has to be communicated, has to be expressed in an intelligible as well as logical way. People must understand it, and people must be able to follow the logical sequence. Are you getting my point? Please try to understand. And if you don't, let me know, because this is very, very important. Academic writing. What do you find as academic writing? Answer to a question. Say, when we give you assignments, you write answers to certain questions. When we tell you to write an examination, sit for an examination, you also write answers to a question. That answer has to be structured. We all know that you are also supposed to give, say, term papers or dissertations or seminar papers or something of that sort. Even there, the structure is important, and the structure is logical. It's a logical structure. First of all, if you really want to talk on a particular topic, think about my class lecture. I started today by pointing out what I want to do today, what I want to teach. I am teaching academic writing, and I am talking about the structure of academic writing. Yes? So first, I am going to deal with the exposition of the topic, that you variously term as introduction, exposition, prologue, statement of the problem, etc., etc., etc. So what we really do at the outset, when we engage in academic writing, when we write for academic reasons, is to either to point out what we intend to do, or we actually talk about what is the situation. Why are you interested in or forced to write this particular piece? Now, we all know that in any written communication, there has to be an introduction, a body of argument, and also a conclusion or summing up. Now, till now, we have done it without knowing why we do it, without analyzing how we do it. And a course on academic writing is the proper place. It gives you the proper opportunity to understand what you do, why you do it, and how you do it. The whats, the whys, and the hows of writing will be taught you in this particular course. Now, what are the necessary steps What are the necessary steps in this context? Think about it. You have done a course on research methodology, have you not?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So here you have, in a way, a continuation of that. Please think about it. How things are being done in a very, very methodical manner. You had translation studies in semester 1. I'm talking about this slot, the O5 slot that we have chosen to teach you. There are others also. There is media studies. There is, English language teaching. But why have we chosen to emphasize this? You had translation studies. Translation studies is very important for many reasons. We all know that translation studies is important for making sense of things from one language to another language environment. And in any research, in any study, we will see that getting to know what is being written in other languages may become very, very important. For example, think about it. Derrida, Foucault, they have written in another language. Bakhtin and Anandavardhana have written in another language, in other languages, each of them. So some may have written something important in Spanish, some others in German, others still in Russian or French or Sanskrit or Chinese or whatever. Now, for those of us who are engaged in literary pursuits, literary studies, it often becomes very, very essential for us to know what is being written in other languages also. That is why Mikhail Bakhtin, for example, found his wider worldwide currency after he had been translated into English. So that was one very important preliminary course. Then there is you have also studied research methodology. Research methodology, you have been instructed about how to go about research, how to engage in research, how to pursue research. And in this process, you have also been taught the difference between and the relationship and the similarities between study and research. Research is also a kind of study. Research is a rigorous study. When we engage in research, when we engage in study, these are all cognitive propositions. So, there are things that we know. There are things we don't know. And there are ways of knowing those unknown. Now, how we go about knowing the unknown how we go about acquiring knowledge, how we go about processing that knowledge. This is something, or these are things that we have tried to drill into you while dealing with research methodology. And think about the gradual progression. Now in third semester, you are being taught academic writing. You have already, through translation studies, given tools, means of accessing data from other languages. Number two, through research methodology course, that course on research methodology, you have been taught how to go about research, how to collect data, how to access data, how to assess data, and so on and so forth, how to analyze data. Even the critical article that you read in the cognitive parlance is marked as data. Now, in this course on academic writing, you are being taught how to go about writing your findings, how to go about expressing what you want to do, what you are doing, and what you have done. The past, present, and future of the research process. See, think about it. The first thing that we are going to deal with is proposal. Are we not? One of you read it, the subunits from unit 3. Bikram, for example.
Yes, sir. Proposals.
Yes, proposal. So first, we are deliberately teaching you the writing of proposal, academic proposals. It can be a research proposal. It can be a statement of purpose. It can be a statement of intent. It can be a synopsis. It can be an abstract. These are terms that we need to think about. These are terms that we need to define and characterize. And these are terms, this is very important, we need to differentiate from one another. They are different. But let's be wise enough to understand that in spite of their structural differences, at bottom, they have the same purpose. They are basically indicative of our plans for the study or research. So when we write a statement of intent, a statement of purpose for a research study, for a dissertation, a research proposal, a full-fledged research proposal, which is a larger composition, a synopsis, which is basically a summing up of what you have done. or an abstract, which is a proposal for a paper or an article. So what we are actually doing is basically to express what we intend to do. Why have we chosen a particular subject? What is the state of information in this subject? What we already know, what we don't know, or what we have not properly considered, and how we want to analyze and try to understand what we have not already considered. Are you getting my point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, a proposal. Usually, a proposal contains certain sections. A proposal is written based on certain points. Now, here you have to understand these points, these sections may be stated clearly or implied through separate paragraphs or groups of paragraphs being dedicated to them. Think about it. You may write and highlight the sections such as the statement of the problem, research questions and hypotheses, research methodology, chapter-wise breakup, conceptual framework, and select bibliography. Now, select bibliography or works cited has to be there. But so far as the other sections or points are concerned, they may be stated clearly or they may be implied indirectly through specific paragraphs. Again, I am telling you, or groups of paragraphs being dedicated to a particular point. For example, you may write the statement of the problem in one paragraph or in multiple paragraphs, in a single paragraph or in multiple paragraphs. Understood? So you see, what you are getting at is basically a structured composition. There should not be any haphazardness. It should be trim and logical. Because academic writing is formal writing. Here, expression of emotion, repetition of ideas, digression from the main point, these things should be avoided. These things should be avoided. Because academic writing is often geared towards a target readership of sufficient academic intelligence and competence. What do I mean? When you write an answer to a question, say in the examination hall, or while while writing your paper online for a particular examination, whatever it may be, what do you expect? Do you expect your answer to be read or evaluated by a someone who has done his, say, class 10 or plus 2, that is class 12 examinations? No. You expect that this will be read by us, your teachers. This will be analyzed, evaluated by us, your teachers. So, a particular standard of academic intelligence and command over subject is presupposed in the target readership of academic writing. Similarly, when you suppose you present a paper in a conference, think about the Parley 2021, recently concluded Parley 2021 lecture series. Think about it. Parley 2021 brought before you a series of lectures. These lectures were delivered by learned speakers and experienced academicians. When they talked, when they spoke, they expected you to possess a store of information in the subject mentioned. If you had that, you could make sense of it. If you didn't have that, you could not make sense of it. And if you didn't have that, or if you don't have the store of information or the knowledge competence, academic writings teaches you that you should diligently try to improve your store of information, your analytical acumen, and your educational status. Have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So far as the proposal is concerned, what we need to understand is a proposal gives you the state of information in a particular area, because it is only based on that you guys, that we academicians, students, teachers, researchers, writers, thinkers, philosophers, sociologists, and so on and so forth, we actually write what we have to communicate with the target readership. So there is statement of problem. There is also another issue to consider. That is the objectives of this study. What are your objectives? What do you propose to do, propose to communicate, propose to investigate it rather? Then you actually, while thinking about a particular topic, for example, Shakespeare's use of images in his works, plays, poems, and all that, you will see that there are a particular set of research questions and hypotheses that you would like to test. TEST. What are they? For example, because you have read some Shakespearean text or the other, you know. So we may ask the following questions. For example, what are the sources of Shakespeare's imagery? Are they drawn from, say, everyday life? Are they drawn from classical mythology and all that, or literature? Are they drawn from the learned professions? Are they drawn from the fields of law and commerce or sea explorations? You think about sonnet number 116. There he gives you the images of the pollster and the wandering buck. While dealing with the subject of love, he actually refers to these things. In those days, the pollster was a direction finder at sea, at night for the mariners. Similarly, these images were taken from the seafaring life, because during the Renaissance, exploration of new lands was a very, very important preoccupation for the Europeans. Similarly, if you think about another sonnet, I'm taking up Shakespeare's sonnets as a locus classicus, as a case in point. You know, you think about another sonnet, say, in sonnet number 64, Shakespeare refers to the uh, the metamorphosis by Ovid, when I have seen the farm soil wean of the watery main, you know, when I have seen the interchange of state or state itself confounded to decay. So, you know, here the classical source is there. Similarly, another question can be, what is the nature of Shakespeare's images? How can they be categorized? Are they sensory images? Are they images that have to do with the senses of sight, of sound, of smell, of touch, of taste? So ocular, optical images. Similarly, auditory, olfactory, tactile or gastronomical images. Another question may be, are the images employed by Shakespeare amenable to a categorization, elemental categorization? Have you understood? Hello?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I can't hear you properly, and that's why I'm asking. Hello? Am I audible?
Yes, sir, audible.
So you see, the elemental images of Shakespeare having to do with the earth, the air, the water, the fire, and all that. And if we think about our Indian concept of elements, tattva or bhoot, panchabhoot, khiti, ob, tej, marud, vyom, and all that. So what we really want to point out here is that how Shakespeare have gleaned his images, how he has used these images. For example, another important question. Has Shakespeare used symbolic images? Are some of the images so frequent and so topical that they acquire the position of a symbol? We need to discuss. We need to discuss this. Understood? So these are research questions. Then the methodology. What kind of methodology will you apply in investigating Shakespeare's images? You have to understand that your approach has to be textual as well as contextual. Similarly, it will be interpretative and interdisciplinary because various disciplines will provide you with the answers. Shakespeare has gleaned his images from multiple sources, from law and commerce, from sea exploration and military engagements. For example, you remember in sonnet number 65, he was talking about the siege, the image of the siege, the metaphor, Oh, how shall summer's honey breath hold out against the wreckful siege of battering days when rocks impregnable are not so stout? Then the conceptual framework. Conceptual framework is basically a brief and precise exposition of your plan. You have already given your chapter-wise breakup of the proposed thesis. Now, in the conceptual framework, you have to analyze for the edification of your target readership what you really want to do in the specific chapters that will construct your argument. That will be contained in your dissertation. So what you intend to do in the introductory chapter, what you intend to do in the first body chapter or the second chapter, what you intend to do in the other chapters, you have to point out. In doing so, however, you have to give certain specific instances or examples in order to justify your research. How? In the conceptual framework, for example, you have to write in analysis of your proposed chapter on elemental images. not only the concept of elemental imagery, but also textual instances of Shakespeare using the elemental image. Are you getting my point? How Shakespeare has used the fire image. How Shakespeare has used water imagery, and so on and so forth. You have to point out. Similarly, in the sensory imagery chapter, the chapter on sensory images, you have to think about, you have to produce, in order to justify your research, in order to justify the inclusion of this chapter, you have to point out from Shakespeare's use of images, from Shakespeare's works, an instance of, say, optical image. You think about it. The skylark image. Yet in those thoughts myself almost despising, happily I think on thee. And then my stage, like to the lark at break of day, arising from sullen earth, sings hymns at heaven's gate. So when you are talking about singing hymns, when you are talking about traveling deep heaven with your bootless cries, the image that you are constructing is an auditory image. That has to be hard. Understood? When in King Lear, the demented patriarch, in the storm scene, tries to buy from an imaginary, the fictitious and non-existent apothecary some perfume to ward off the stench of female genitalia. He is using basically an olfactory image. So these are things that we have to understand. And obviously, because we have given some analysis of what this conceptual framework is all about, then we have to come to the last very important thing that will conclude today's discussion. And what is that? That is the section on select bibliography, or the list of works cited. The list of works cited, what are which books have you cited? Which books have you consulted while writing this particular thing? Now, this is something you need to understand. Because while teaching you the course on research methodology, I had taught you something about plagiarism and inversely about the concept of academic integrity. If you actually use data from other people without proper acknowledgement and justification, you are committing the sin of the very, very dangerous sin of plagiarism. Because what a person writes becomes his intellectual property. And there are copyright issues. What you can copy, how far you can copy, When can you copy, and so on and so forth. So you have to cite the sources. The books on imagery. For example, the poetic image. Dictionaries and encyclopedias. For example, the encyclopedia, Princeton Encyclopedia, Poetry and Poetics, for example. These things you have to cite. And even work that has already been done in this area. So that we can, as readers of your academic writing, we can understand where from you have drawn your information and insight. Are they original or derivative? Understood? So with this, we come to the end of our discussion of the proposal. I will, in the passing, talk about the various types of proposal later on. Don't worry. Now, is there any question that you would like to ask me?
Sir, Bikram asked a question.
Yes, Vikram?
What's the difference between research article and research proposal?
Now, it's a very elementary question, but thank you for the question all the same. Now, research proposal is basically what you want to do. And research article or dissertation. This is basically a report of your research findings. In the proposal, you told us, or you would tell us what you want to do. And in the research article or the dissertation on a larger scale, you will come up with the research findings. So after doing the research, you will write the research. Before doing the research, you will write the research proposal. After doing the research, you will write the research article or the dissertation. But here, let me qualify this remark ever so slightly. Please do remember that even for writing the research proposal, you should gain some kind of competence. You should gain some command of what you are wanting to work on. Suppose someone who does not know, who has not read or analyzed Shakespeare's imagery, can he or she come up with a research proposal? No. Research proposal is basically a laying down of a blueprint, your research plan. That is why it is proposal. You propose to do this research in this way, as is enunciated in your research proposal. But research paper is the fruit of that research. If research proposal is the root of research, then research paper or dissertation must be the fruit of that research. Are you getting my point? Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Are there any other questions?
Sir, while writing, sir, in fourth
Yes.
semester, when we will write the dissertation, shall we have to write this proposal also?
You have to write the proposal, if not for others, at least for your own sake. Because while writing the research proposal, what you do is you actually crystallize your thought process. You come up with the plan, not in abstract, but in concrete details. And you know one thing, I'm telling you, because I also supervise, I have done my research And I am still doing research, and I also supervise research. You will understand when you go about this, you will see that, research proposal is not something that you just write once. You have to go on revising the research proposal to a particular extent. Why? Because only by revising your research proposal can you come to a definite and feasible research plan that you can materialize in and through your research article on the one hand, or research dissertation or thesis on the other. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, then with this we come to the end of today's lesson.
Sir,
Thank you for
Sandeepan,
being with us,
sir,
and
Sandeepan asked,
we will meet you on this thing on Tuesday. No, Tuesday offline. Okay.
sir,
Yes,
Sandeepan
sir.
asked, a-
Yes. Yes. Proceed.
what are the key problems of academic writing? What are we prohibited to do in academic writing?
What are the key problems of academic writing, and what are we prohibited to do in academic writing? Okay, again, good question. The problems of academic writing, number one, you have to understand, are concerned with your lack of knowledge of the subject, your lack of command over the expressive medium or language. When you actually rectify that situation, you actually surmount those obstacles. So you have to be able to think properly, and you have to be able to express properly. But even for thinking properly, you have to know your subject. Academic writing is purpose specific. You actually engage in the process of academic writing when you have got something specific to say about a particular subject in the form of a proposal or a paper or a dissertation, whatever, an abstract, a synopsis, and so on and so forth. But you see that in all cases, first you have to study. You have to know your subject, the author, the work, the theme, the representation, and the politics thereof. All these things you must know. And you must think properly. You have to structure your arguments in a logical sequence. And then you have to express your arguments in intelligible, in correct, and in standard English. Because we are talking about students and researchers of English language and literature, or literatures in English, or English translation, all that matter. And what are the prohibitions? Obviously, prohibition means, there are certain prohibitions. For example, there is the question of plagiarism. You are prohibited from using the data of other people without proper citation and proper justification. Similarly, you are prohibited from exceeding the time limit, because academic writing in almost all cases, it is a part of a time-bound process. For students, for researchers, even for writers of books, there is a deadline. So obviously, within a particular span of time, you have to complete your research and your academic writing as well. So I hope that satisfactorily answers your question. Sandeepa?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay, then you may remove me.